I would like to next introduce the moderator, Parnika, for the panel discussion titled Redefining Leadership in the AI Era. Parnika Agarwal is a deep tech product leader, passionate about bringing cutting-edge innovations from lab to the market. She has a BTech in Material Science and Engineering from IIT Kanpur and a PhD from MIT. Today, she is head of product at Siren OPT, I hope I pronounced it right, where she is leading the commercialization of breakthrough plasma-based measurement tools and also advises startups working in semiconductor adjacent technologies. Outside of work, Parnika loves to travel, choreograph Bharatnatyam dance to Western music, that's interesting, and recently has picked up skiing. So I would like to invite Parnika as well as all the other panelists, Abhita, Gayatri, and Shobna to the stage.
So hi everyone, it's great to be here. Thank you so much Ishita for the opportunity. I'm very excited to be hosting the panel on women leadership in the AI era. And thank you Rati for the encouragement. Before we hear from our amazing panelists, I'd like to share a quick story about my own leadership journey. A few years ago, I was at a big company and I went to my skip level manager with an idea for a software product that could improve knowledge sharing at Applied Materials where I was. He loved the idea and asked me to run with it. We pulled a team together, launched the product at an internal conference within a few months, and I realized that the product was an instant hit. We got great feedback in the conference and after it. And over the next year, I saw the product grow to thousands of users across the globe within our company. What I realized from that experience was how much I loved building products and how much I liked using my deep tech knowledge to actually enable users to improve their own productivity and their own knowledge and learning. And that moment is what propelled me into a product-focused career and eventually into my current role as head of product at Sirenopt. For me, it showed that leadership isn't just about managing people. It's about seeing an opportunity, rallying others, and creating something that lasts. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. So with that, I'd like to welcome our panelists today, and I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves. Gayatri, do you want to start?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, I'm Gayatri Khandelwal, and I've been in Silicon Valley for over 20 years. I'm the global vice president for a consulting company of Genpact. It's a $5 billion consulting company in advanced technology. And prior to that, spent about 8 years at Salesforce in sales roles, and spent about 9 years at Cisco. I'm IIT Delhi graduate. I in master's in chemical engineering, and then some personal facts. I have a wonderful a wonderful daughter who's senior at high school, and then besides my corporate role, I co-founded a healthcare startup that I advise over the during my free time, and I'm also very much interested in keeping track of market trends and manage a significant portfolio. So that's about me, and thank you for joining us here.
Hi everyone, I'm Abhita Chugh. I went to IIT Kharagpur, studied computer science and engineering over 20 years ago now. And I've been in the Bay Area for also over 20 years. My work experience has all been at large companies. So Oracle is where I started, Yahoo, Microsoft, and I've been at Google for the last 16 years now. I currently run engineering for Google Drive. I also have 2 daughters, a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. And when I'm not taking care of kids or working, I'm a pretty crazy fitness freak. So solid core is my latest obsession. That's, you'll find me doing some fitness-related thing if I'm not at home.
Hi everyone, I'm Shobna. First of all, great to be here. Thanks for having me here. So in terms of introduction, I'm from IIT Delhi, graduated 2 decades ago. Post-graduation, came here to California for a master's at Stanford. After that, I worked as an earthquake engineer, so that was my first job. Did that for a few years, then decided to go to business school in Chicago. So I moved to Chicago for 2 years, did my MBA. Post that, started at McKinsey, so that's how I was able to transition from a technical career to a strategy career. And after spending time there in consulting, majority of my experience has been at LinkedIn. I was at LinkedIn for 6 years, and my last role at LinkedIn was leading the BizOps team for LinkedIn advertising. 4 years ago, I joined my current company called Hinge Health. When I joined them, it was Series D. Now we are a 1,500-person public company. So that's been a great experience being part of that growth journey. On the personal side, I have 2 kids, 11 and 7-year-old. And a fun fact about me, when I was at IIT, I was part of the basketball team. So, and that was a fun experience, traveling to different IIT campuses and participating in inter-IIT sports competition.
Awesome. It is such a pleasure to be hosting this panel with these amazingly talented women. What I'm seeing here is that not only are they excelling at their work and parenting and taking care of their families, but they also have amazing hobbies that they've all tried to keep up with after all these years. So that's great inspiration for me as well, and hopefully for all of you. So with that, let's start with our first question, which is about career risks and pivots. So I've seen firsthand how taking risks can open new doors, from working in a chip fab to modeling processes for the latest iPhones and data centers. This is all I did. This is all what I did at Applied Materials. I tried different roles, to now building products at a startup. And each shift has taught me something different about leadership and resilience. So this is a question to all the panelists. Maybe we'll start with Gayatri. Was there a moment when you took a risk, changing roles, switching industries, or speaking up in a tough room that shifted your career trajectory? What did you learn about yourself and leadership?
Okay, fantastic question. So in terms of the career pivots, I've done about 4 or 5 different career pivots. So I would start with two decades ago, graduated from IIT Delhi, master's in chemical engineering. Joined Unilever in India as within the chemical engineering field. And then this is when the dot-com bubble was there, and I had the American dream. And I realized, if I were to coming to US was easier if I had the IT background. So then this is when I switched my career and joined GE. GE had built recent GE India Technology Center. I joined there. There was a great career. I got a good balance of chemical engineering and IT, and then eventually I found an H1 sponsor and came to the country, and eventually landed at Cisco. So my first career pivot was chemical engineering to information technology, and then at Cisco took engineering roles, was there for about 9 years, and one day a recruiter from Salesforce called and said, if you want to come and join our customer success team. And then it was, that was back in 2014, and I was like, yeah, Salesforce was one of the hot companies. And then I joined Salesforce, and within Salesforce, from customer success, then from there, I started working with people in sales. And then I felt like maybe I should switch to sales, and I was lucky enough to find a role. So I switched to sales. And then after like 2 years, I started having itch again to change a role. So then there's a partner sales organization which manages the partner side of the relationship. So I got a role there. I became a director of ISV partnerships, managing some of the large partnerships. So that was the career pivots in terms of changing from engineering career to more sales-focused careers and getting like different flavors of experiences. And then I got a call from another recruiter from Capgemini saying if I wanted to become an industry leader for high tech, and then take on marketing as well. And I felt like I haven't done marketing, so that seems interesting. I did that, and now with like last 1 year, I have been really focusing on like the AI and data. And so this is when I joined the smaller company, which I have a bigger portfolio. I manage a sales portfolio and the team and P&L. So so yeah, couple of a few career pivots, and so 2 things if I want to like take away from this is, one is I didn't know if I thought I knew everything going into changing the role, but I was ready to take the risks, right? So if you get the opportunity, like you may not think you're ready, but take the risk, right? It's worth the risk. And then second, I have a big, large network, but pretty much every pivot that I did, it was a recruiter calling me and reaching out to me. And so I guess, yeah, be out there and things would happen if you continue to try. So I think that's my 2 cents
That's
here.
awesome. You made a lot of different career pivots, different technologies, different functions in different companies. So it's pretty impressive. I see a trend of curiosity and always wanting to learn something new.
You should have gone last. No. All right. So I haven't made the type of career pivots in terms of changing industries. I graduated from, I got my master's at Stanford, and since then I've been in the Valley, very much in the software industry. But I had been at Google for over 16 years, and every 2 or 3 years I've done something different. And very much like Gayatri mentioned, every role has taught me something different about myself, has made me realize what my strengths are. I think the one that really stands out distinctly is when I made the switch from individual contributor to a tech lead. So, and I remember I was on my first maternity leave, actually, still had 2 more months left to come back to work. And my manager called up and he said, your tech lead is leaving. Would you like to step into this role, and if so, I will do this job for 2 months till you come back, and when you come back, you can step into this role. And I don't know what happened in that blur of moment. I just said, yes, I'll do it, and of course freaked out after I hung up, because I was a junior engineer back then, 2 years into my career at Google, and the role that he was offering me had traditionally only been offered to people who were 2 levels higher, so it was a much larger scope. But I did come back, I took it on and did well at it. In 8 months after coming back, I got promoted, but more than that, what I learned was really the strengths that I had, right? I enjoyed breadth. I was good at it. I enjoyed managing multiple stakeholders. I enjoyed working on products. I was able to keep a lot of balls in the air at the same time and stay on top of it. And many of those strengths I need even today in my role. So I think that was definitely one learning, and that's been the case with every transition. And the other switch that I made is every time somebody who knows my work at least reaches out with an opportunity that sounds larger than what I think I can handle, my default answer now is always yes. And I've been lucky to have at least, a few of these type of opportunities, and those have been the ones that have really brought about the step change in career and in personal growth as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Shobna.
So I'll focus on one career pivot or one risk example, which is 4 years ago, I was at LinkedIn, loved the role, loved the people I worked with, was part of a hyper-growth business. So, was really happy there, was really enjoying my time there. And then one day, out of the blue, I get an in-mail from the recruiting team at Hinge Health, with an opportunity. And, I didn't know anything about this vertical. I didn't know anything about the space or the company. I actually had to Google what is MSK when I got that first in-mail. But I was generally curious, so I took the call and had the conversation, and then, learned more about the business, the company, the role, and got more and more excited. But it was a risk at that point in terms of, leaving a very comfortable job, a good job at a large, well-known brand, and joining an earlier stage company. So that was the risk I took at that time. And again, fast forward 4 years, it has truly turned out to be the risk, to take, and truly turned out to be worth it. But at that point, it was a very risky kind of a decision. So what I've learned about myself as well as leadership during that phase is, I'm naturally a very risk-averse person. So what that means is, I had to force myself to take the risk, but then also figure out a way to de-risk to the extent possible. So the way I did it was, I'd spent a lot of time learning about the space, spent a lot of weeks talking to people who knew about the vertical, who knew about the space, to educate myself, did my own different scenario planning models and things like that to understand the space, understand the company, understand the team. So talk to people at the company, talk to other experts. So that's one thing in terms of, if you're taking risk and you find it too risky, look for ways to de-risk it to the extent possible. And then the second thing I'll say is, whenever you're taking a risk, give it some time, especially if you have conviction. There'll always be ups and downs. But if you have conviction, just stay the course and give it time. In the end, eventually it works out.
Thank you. That's such a powerful message. I can relate to so many stories here. Since Shobna went last, I'll relate to the story. I also recently made a switch from a big company to a startup, and I had the same exact anxieties, leaving my safe, comfortable job where I was really doing well, with a paycheck, the company's not going anywhere, benefits, everything, to a small startup. And even though I was really excited about the job and the job description and the opportunity to grow the team and really shape the product, it was still really scary. And there were many times I was like, should I even try doing this? And then there are so many things that come to our mind, like, will I be able to do it? What about immigration? What about money? What about family? All of those things. And at the end of the day, what I realized was that if I don't do it, I'm just going to regret it 10 years later. So I'm just going to take the leap and deal with whatever happens. So risk-taking is about believing in your own abilities to deal with whatever the situation is and whatever happens. Believing in your own ability to deal with it. And I also really liked what Abita said about saying yes to opportunities. I feel like I also made a lot of changes in teams within Applied, and even now to leaving Applied to Cyronopt. And a lot of times these new opportunities just came from conversations with my colleagues about what they were working on and what were their problems, and trying to understand that and saying yes to helping them in whatever way possible. Whenever you say yes to opportunities that come to work, whenever you go take the extra leap to do one thing extra that your manager didn't tell you, but you're interested in that problem, that is where you learn more about yourself, about what you're good at, and where new opportunities come from. So, great stories. Thank you. So now I want to pivot to influence, which is kind of a theme that relates to the power presence theme of the conference itself. So one of the most challenging but rewarding parts of my career has been aligning people who don't report to me. I did that at Applied, and I still have to do that now. I work with engineering, product, and sales teams. Each of them have competing priorities, and it is challenging. So what has worked for me is building credibility and trust and seeing everybody as a human and trying to understand where they're coming from and what are their objectives and what is going to help them succeed. But I would love to hear from our panelists about how they deal with competing priorities at work and how do they bring different people together. So Shobna, do you want to start with this?
Happy to. So I've spent majority of my career in a BizOps role, and BizOps by definition requires influencing without authority. For those of you who are not familiar with how BizOps is typically structured in a company, the business strategy or business operations teams would partner with product team, finance team, sales, marketing, but none of those functions report into BizOps. So there's a lot of cross-functional alignment. There's a lot of influencing without authority that somebody in such a role would need to do. So for example, in one of my prior roles, I would partner with the product leaders, the product roadmap, the product strategy. I was not the decision maker, but obviously a very strong influencer. So to answer your question in terms of how do you influence without authority, one of the things you said was building trust and credibility, and that is step one. In order to be able to influence somebody, you have to have their trust, you have to have credibility. And to me, trust is essentially consistency over time. So, it takes time, right? Every day you have to show up in a way that you build trust bit by bit. So that's like every meeting, every conversation, every week, think about ways that you are adding value, you are investing in that relationship. And some of the times it's like very small little things like showing up for meetings on time, respecting other people's priorities, other people's time. So even small little things like that, when you do it on a consistent basis, day after day, it helps build credibility, it helps build your brand, it helps build trust. So that's the first step. The second thing I would say is if you want to influence without authority, you have to be a problem solver. So don't go to a business partner to identify problems or to raise issues. Go to them with a solution, go to be a problem solver. For example, don't go to a business partner and say, we are not tracking the right metrics or we don't have a dashboard. Pull up an Excel or whichever tool you use and build a dashboard and show it to your business partner or share it with them. So add value, be a problem solver. The third thing I would say is influencing is a two-way street, right? It's not just about you communicating your ideas, you communicating your recommendations, but it's also a lot of listening. It's a lot of active listening in terms of understanding their needs, their priorities. So invest the time in doing a lot of one-on-ones with different stakeholders, different leaders to understand what they are trying to do, as well as sharing your ideas and build relationships in those smaller one-on-one settings. And the last and final thing would be around alignment. Once you've done those small one-on-one meetings with all the stakeholders who have a say in your project or the decision, and you've incorporated all their feedback, all their input, then bring everyone together in the same room so that you can get alignment, ensure that nobody is speaking past each other, they're all talking the same language. So you do need that final kind of alignment where you bring everyone in the same room on the same call and get to a decision, get to an outcome. So those are the steps I would follow to influence without authority. So trust, credibility, be a problem solver, invest in those one-on-ones, and be an active listener, and finally strive towards alignment.
That's awesome. That's such a nice four-step formula to build credibility and influence without authority. So let's move on next to AI and the future, which is also another theme of the conference. We are all using AI. We've been talking about it earlier in this conference for our personal reasons, for our companies, for our family, in all sorts of ways. So at Sironopt, we are using AI to accelerate R&D and manufacturing of advanced materials. this is the deep tech sector. Not many people hear about this type of AI. It's not really the Gen AI and LLMs, but still there's a lot of opportunity because there are so many sensors that are collecting all sorts of data at all points of time. And there is so much opportunity to improve material yields, to reduce the reliance on rare earth metals. So lots of opportunity that we are trying to leverage using AI to accelerate manufacturing. So my question to all the panelists here, how are you using AI? How is AI changing your job or industry, both at the individual level and at the company level? Abhita, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I work in Google Drive, which is a part of the broader organization called Workspace in Google. Workspace is the line of products that includes Gmail, chat, calendar, Google Drive. So pretty much products most of us use have got billions of users. Each of these products has billions of users. The way we are seeing, of course, so we have a term at Google called dog fooding, which is we first try out everything we build. So very heavy AI users of meeting notes and summaries and all of that, and seeing both the positives and all the things that are not working firsthand. In terms of the opportunity that the products have, I think we're really looking, we've taken a step back and we're really looking at what are the sort of step change improvements that this technology can bring about. And so, Monica mentioned earlier using AI as a strategy, so we're seeing that happen across all products. In terms of putting that to execution, I think the biggest change I've seen is more organizational. The sense of urgency that I'm seeing at the company over the last 18 months, and it's getting stronger and stronger with every passing week. We are operating faster than we have ever operated. I mean, the 16 years I've been at Google, I've never seen this pace of work, and that has required all of us as leaders to adopt a very different mindset as well, very different way of working. So in any given day, typically I am now in daily stand-ups, all the way from the most junior engineer working on a feature to the VP. Everybody's in the same room on the same call, making decisions and really launching things on a weekly basis. I think so very fast decision making. We're seeing organizational hierarchies disappear. We're also seeing organizational boundaries disappear. So a lot of what Shobna said about influencing without authority is required on a day-to-day basis. We work closely with the research teams, with the DeepMind teams at Google. So it's exciting.
It's awesome. Google is definitely at the forefront of AI and AI product use, and we all use Google products, so it's amazing to see all of the developments coming out of Google.
And I'd say the one word that is really, again, it's important for influencing with authority is like very strong ownership. So what we're seeing as leaders in there is not just thinking about our product, but across all of the entire suite of products. How is AI, how do we make AI the fabric to connect all of this? And when you're working at such a fast pace, also ensuring that things don't fall through the cracks. So even if it's not your team, it's some other team, you're constantly stepping up there and trying to make sure nothing falls through the cracks.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful message about ownership, about thinking about the product and the company as your own product and company, and not just thinking about it as a place that you just go in and work. If you start having an ownership mindset, if you see a problem, you will automatically be motivated to go and solve it and fix it. So that's really important. Gayatri.
Sure, and happy to wrap this up. So Abhita talked about all the excitements at Google. I want to just talk about the industry overall. Raise your hands if you heard latest statement that Sam Altman made, that the day is not very far away when a company generating billion-dollar revenue, right? Not billion, million, billion-dollar revenue having run by just one employee, right? So, so this is, this is probably not going to happen anytime soon, but this is the pace that C-levels are looking at. Like in my role, as I'm talking to the C-levels at different organizations from healthcare, yeah, how can we expedite the clinical trial of, like, instead of something that took like 5 years, can we do it in 6 months, right? So can we get cure for autoimmune disease that never happened? At the same time, can we, we have all the statements from Satya Nadella to Benioff that 30 to 40% of their code is being developed by agents. So I think this is the world that we are living in, and I want to just echo what Monica mentioned. We all are learning, right? And we all have the personal responsibility to learn. I myself, although I did say that I don't have enough time, but I don't need, in my role, I don't need to be hands-on. I have the support, but in order for me to have an intelligent conversation, I'm spending significant time learning about the different models, their right use cases, what does RAG is, what is the vector database, how do the embeddings actually work, and like all the nuances, like agentic AI to really, how do we put all this together? MCP, they talked about MCP. So to put all the perspective together so we can have one upskilling ourselves, because this AI is the fastest technology adoption that at least I have seen in my lifetime, and it is just the beginning. So I think I'm excited. I don't have, obviously, like everyone of you, I don't have enough hours to learn, but I'm very passionate about learning. So I guess you all are too. So yeah, YouTube and YouTube is my go-to channel, and there's a AI news channel from Matt Wolf. That's my go-to place. Every week they post a lot of updates in the different models that they release. So that's a fantastic way to learn. So yeah.
Awesome. So we have limited time, so I'll switch to the next question, but I just wanted to share a quick story about a very cool use case of AI that many people may not have heard of. It's not related to business or work, but maybe some of you remember Ishita mentioned in the introduction that I like dancing. So I went to one of these events where they had put a bunch of sensors which were measuring the heartbeat of all of the dancers, and everyone's dancing in a room together. And those sensors were being used to generate music by AI, just measuring people's heartbeats and kind of responding to that rhythm of the room in real time. So there are lots of very cool use cases of AI and creativity that are coming up and that are very encouraging and exciting to see. So I'm pretty excited about how AI is rapidly evolving and changing how all of us live our lives. So let's wrap up with a very quick rapid-fire question. I'm going to start with Shobna. What is one leadership myth you'd like to bust?
The myth that strong leaders need to be the loudest people in the room.
Awesome.
I've seen many introverts. I'm one, and quite people who are pretty effective.
Awesome. What is the best advice you've received?
Try to make your team, your org, your company, depending on your scope, try to make that group successful, and then individual success will follow.
That's amazing. And what is your superpower?
Time management. I operate like clockwork, so yeah.
That's amazing, something we can all learn from. All right, next on to Abita. What is one leadership myth you'd like to bust?
I think it has to be the higher you go, the harder you have to work. And I think that one particularly is close to my heart because I mentor a lot of people, and especially women. I see a lot of very deserving, very hardworking women say no to opportunities that are a step above because they are worried that if they get promoted, they'll have to work harder. And I haven't found that to be true in my own life. I mean, hard work is a prereq. You can get lucky, but anyone who sees continuous success is obviously hardworking. But the higher you go, you basically change how you spend your time and where you're spending it, and you learn to delegate, etc. But you're not necessarily burning more hours, right? So
that's good to know for all of us who wish to climb up the career ladder. What's the best advice you've received?
Ask for whatever you want. Don't assume that you'll get it.
Awesome. And what is your superpower?
I think ownership. I took this for granted when I was a junior engineer. Even as the most junior engineer in the room, I was always the person who would walk in and try and scope out projects and try and do way more than what I was asked to do. And I think every promotion, every opportunity that I've gotten at Google at least has come out of just owning problems completely and always doing more than what was expected.
That's lovely. All right, on to Gayatri.
Okay.
Sorry?
No, go ahead.
What is one leadership myth you'd like to bust?
That leaders have answers to all the questions, or they are most knowledgeable.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that.
So the reason they make decisions with confidence is because they are used to. They use their gut feeling or their experience, and they assume. So usually, the higher you go, you have to make your decision based on the least amount of information. So, yeah.
Okay, great. And what is the best advice you've received?
You are responsible for your personal and professional growth. So find time for it.
Awesome. And what is your superpower?
Adaptability and be able to bounce back quickly from a challenging event.
Resilience. Yeah. Awesome. That is amazing. It was lovely to have these panelists together. I think we have time for like 1 or 2 questions. So does the audience have any questions for our panelists?
Somebody who hasn't asked a question before.
Thank you for taking my question. Just real quick, you talked about using your own products to build the products you are providing to others. So I would like to know, how does that impact the ROI? Are you getting the returns way in advance, or is it a hit and miss? So I would like to know that.
It's a mixed bag. Right now, it's a mixed bag. And I think a lot of what we are doing is with the conviction that the technology will keep getting better. One of the things our research teams continue to tell us is that design your products assuming that the technology will be a lot cheaper and a lot more capable by the time this thing actually goes out and lands. The other thing is, internally in Google, we use our products very differently compared to how our users use it. So we do a mix of dog fooding and using our own products, and also just pushing out we're doing a lot of experimentation, pushing out things, looking for feedback, trying out a lot of crazy ideas as well. Some land, some don't land. Again, those are all things that we've not historically done at the pace at which we're doing it now.
I think we are out of time, so I know you probably have a lot of questions, and you can talk to the panelists after the session ends. So thank you all so much.
All right, thank you all.